welcome any local elected officials who are here in the room today. So I saw Mr. Patrick Lewis. Are there any other local electeds in the room? If you could stand up. All right, so thank you all for being here. I would like to thank the host of this event, Blue Acadiana, Indivisible Acadiana, the Democratic Women of Louisiana, Louisiana Precinct Organizing Project, the Lady Dems of Acadiana, Universal Democratic Alliance, and Move the Mindset. All of these groups are local progressive groups, and if you don't know about them, ask someone in the crowd. Raise your hand if you are in one of those groups. If you'd like to meet somebody and talk about one of these groups, then please let someone know in the room, because there will be a number of people who can help you out. All right, I'd also like to ask you to silence your cell phones or turn them off. And so after a brief introduction of the candidate, we are going to have a question and answer session. I ask that you keep your questions brief and that you have one follow-up. So, and also we have to wrap up by 7 p.m. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Minnie Methvin. Minnie is a recent candidate for U.S. Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. She is a lifelong public servant, and I have the great honor of working for her in this campaign. So without further ado, Minnie Methvin.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Minnie Methvin, and it is my honor to be here tonight to introduce Gwen Collins-Greenup as our next Secretary of State of Louisiana. I wrote a little longer speech to talk a little bit about my race, but I'm going to skip over that because we have a short time tonight, and we want to really hear from Ms. Collins-Greenup and have time for questions and answers. So I just want to remind you that on December 8th, Louisiana has a runoff for Secretary of State, and Democrat Gwen Collins-Greenup is the underdog in this race. She's a Democrat, she's a woman, she's an African-American, and she's up against an incumbent who, although he has never been elected to Secretary of State, he has lost no time spending lots of taxpayer dollars to boost his name recognition for this office that he inherited in May. The Secretary of State's office oversees elections and voting rights compliance, controls voter registration, takes care of business registrations, is responsible for the state archives, and oversees the operation of state museums. Our state has put up many roadblocks against voter participation in the past, and we need a Secretary of State who supports voter access, not voter suppression. Gwen Collins-Greenup has the qualifications, the experience, and the integrity to do the job. She has a BS in accounting, she graduated with honors from Southern University Law Center, and she is a candidate for a Master of Laws in Taxation from Villanova University School of Law. She's been a public servant in Louisiana for over 20 years, serving as Director of the Criminal Traffic Division in Baton Rouge City Court and Deputy Clerk for the East Feliciana Parish Clerk of Court's office. She has owned several small businesses and has experience in real estate, title abstracting, and tax preparation. Gwen is a doer. She crisscrossed the state and engaged with voters in the primary, and she earned a surprise slot in the runoff despite spending less than $1,500 compared to the $250,000 which is an incredible accomplishment. So Gwen's goal is to improve voter access and registration and to reverse the trend of declining voter turnout. She wants to restore and maintain public trust and confidence in our Secretary of State's office. She will fight for processes which ensure security and integrity of our elections. So please join me in welcoming the Democratic candidate for Secretary of State and our next Secretary of State, Gwen Collins.
How about that introduction? Coming from someone who just ran a powerful campaign herself. And I'm just honored to stand before you today as the people's candidate for Louisiana Secretary of State, because I am running a 100% people-powered campaign. And it's all of you that made it possible for me to stand here today. And I want to make it possible for people to have fair elections, to have access to our ballot box, to have access to our business services, but I also want to make it possible for the other 85% of the Louisianians that are registered to vote, and that's nearly 3 million registered voters with less than 15% participating in most elections. That's 450,000 people around that total making decisions for 4.6 million Louisianians. So I want to make it possible for everyone to participate in our government and to want to participate in our government. Because when people participate, and I want to get 100% participation, I believe that positive change can happen. And that positive change starts with our Secretary of State's office. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I want to see Louisiana win, and I have a next level strategy to put Louisiana first. And from the beginning of my race, I said I was going to run a grassroots and social media campaign because I believe we need to expand that outreach division so that we can get more engagement from all the citizens, all the businesses, and even the visitors to our state. I want to be the Secretary of State for everyone. And I believe I can do it, but I need your help. And that's why I'm here today, because I want to use my experience, my education, and more importantly, my passion for this office to serve you, the state of Louisiana. And right now, I'll just open up the floor for some questions, because I want to hear from you and see what you would like to see happen in our Secretary of State's office, as well as share my platform to engage the other 2.5 million people in Louisiana to start participating in our elections so we can make the decisions that will take Louisiana to the next level. Thank you.
I have a microphone. Are you on this side of the room? Would like to ask a question? I'll pass it down.
I'm David Orey. I'm a biology teacher at SLCC. During this last election, there were a few states that I saw had precincts on university campuses to get university students, and that's a demographic that doesn't vote very well at all. Trying to promote that to a much higher level. I was wondering if there's any kind of plans for doing something like that, maybe even having the same day registration with the election.
Okay, that is a great question, because a lot of the people-powered participation that we saw on my campaign came from me visiting the colleges and universities personally to not only explain my platform, but to also explain how the engaging millennials directly impacts our processes in our state. On our college campuses, I saw college Democrats actually starting back up college Democrat organizations on campus, and I went out and I explained to them what civic engagement is all about and how our government works. And what we saw was them organizing their own voter registration drives, all because someone came to them and said, let's get involved. I want them to say, what can I do, like Gwen did, to step in and do what we need done for our state to go to the next level. And a concern for college students, and I know that concern because I was just sitting in their seat when I was in law school. After a 20-year career, I decided to leave my court administrative position to return to law school. And during law school, you have 4, 5, 6 hour exams, and that's one exam a semester. You're not thinking in November about voting. You're thinking about studying so I can pass this exam. And that's why I believe it's important to find ways, new and innovative ways for college students to be able to vote, because they don't always remember to mail a paper ballot oftentimes. And I have engaged with many college students, and they've said that they would like to see the machines on campus if possible. And I think that if we work together, that we can get that done. But it's gonna take us working together, and I'm more than willing to do that. Thank you.
I'm asking for information. When I was in college, someone knocked on my door in the dorm and registered me. When my daughter went wherever in New Orleans, she was told you cannot go to New Orleans, you must vote absentee in Lafayette. So what happened in between? Do you know? I don't know. Well, was there a change in the law?
Okay, so the Secretary of State's office has a voter outreach division, which I feel we can start using more. And that's one of my larger goals when I get into this office, is to start engaging with community organizations, colleges and universities, schools, as well as churches and other organizations that want to register voters. So through the Secretary of State's office, you can actually request voting machines to come out and demonstrate to people how to use the voting machines. We have lots of issues with people voting. If they've never voted before, they may not know how the machines work, and they may feel like they're embarrassed to come vote, or that they might not press the right buttons. When we get that engagement on that level, someone coming out, not just, waiting for someone to request someone come out, but taking that initiative, like I've done with my campaign, to just come out and engage directly with the people that vote. I believe we need to come out on the college campuses, like I've been doing, and engage college students in registering to vote. And I'm not sure what procedure the Secretary of State's office currently is following, but I'm telling you the procedure that I'm gonna follow when I get in that office, and that's to go out and directly engage people to register and to vote. Thank you.
Yes, hi. I met you at a Blue Acadiana meeting, and I so enjoyed your presentation. Thank you. I work at UL. I teach one class in the fall. And out of 21 students, I encouraged 18 of them to vote. Okay? So that was very well done. And what we did is those students who lived out of town, they could go online, change their voter registration temporarily to Lafayette. They went on in time, of course, vote, and then whenever they needed to they could go back online and turn it back, change it back to wherever their home is when they go home. But many of them had a question for me, because I don't tell them who to vote for, I just get them to vote. Many of them had a question for me. They were very concerned about, as we know, voter suppression concentrates on niche markets, right? So what about LGBTQ rights, and how would your stand on that? Their concern was, if they elect a Secretary of State who is not supportive of LGBTQ rights, it would be easy to target those voters through suppression activities. So if you would address that, please.
Well, I'm against all forms of suppression. I don't care what groups it's all against. And being a person that has served the public in various capacities throughout my life, I'm even an ordained minister. I don't believe in treating anyone differently. I'm a minority, so I know how it feels to be discriminated against. And I'm a woman, so I know how it feels to be discriminated against as a woman with gender bias. And in that office, it is a leadership position. And I believe that leadership is gonna begin with me. So I'm here to protect all the rights of all the citizens, even the businesses and the visitors to our state. I want to see Louisiana do well. And in order to do that, I'm gonna need everyone here participating. And I'm gonna be the Secretary of State for everyone, and I'm gonna support everyone in everything they're doing to bring the leadership and also the just the greatness of our state out in the state of Louisiana. I believe that if we work together, we can do that, and it's gonna take someone that is inclusive, as well as understanding and able to facilitate the diversity that our gumbo state has. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say congratulations. I think it's very, very important to be here, so please bear with me. I have two questions. Number one, if somebody hadn't voted in a while, are they still purging their names off the voter list? That's my first question. And my second question, if somebody commit a felony after they finish their time, as Secretary of State, I don't know if it changed, but can they be allowed to vote? Because once you finish your time, you should be restored your voting rights.
So I'm gonna answer this in two parts. First of all, I'll start with the felon voting rights, because that's really close to my heart. Being in court administration for several years, the director of Criminal Traffic Division, and I've also worked with Department of Corrections interagency-wise, as well as working with the sheriffs and different capacities within our court system. And I see what crime does to our state, our communities. And it's important that everyone has the opportunity to participate. We've even seen people that have had erroneous convictions. We need people to feel like they're a part of Louisiana, and in order to do that, voting is the way we participate in our democracy. So as a protector and a defender of voting rights, it would be my duty as well as my honor to welcome people back who are in reentry programs. I have proudly been endorsed by VOTE, which is an organization, thank you, an organization that promoted unanimous jury verdicts, as well as an organization that promotes Act 636. And as Secretary of State, I will be responsible for helping to implement that act, because March 1st, felons that are on probation and parole with various conditions, but I won't go into those conditions because I don't want to confuse the people that this will impact. They will be able to vote, to register to vote. So I have to work with Department of Corrections. I'll convene a meeting with legislators, Department of Corrections, sheriffs, register of voters, clerks of court, commissioners, to make sure that everyone is on board with getting this done, as well as organizations that impact this great feat of helping people become restored to our community. Secondly, the second question, can you repeat it again?
That's about like if they had to vote for a while, sometimes they would purge.
Okay, the purging, thank you. Purging voter rolls is something that is done when people don't vote in 2 federal elections. That means that if you don't vote in 4 years, your name goes on the inactive list. That is at the discretion of the Secretary of State when that's done. Currently, their current procedure has been to put people on the inactive list after that year, give them a year, around the 5th year, they say they put them on an inactive list. We know there have been purges. We have seen 50,000 names or more purged from voter lists at one time. And what do they do when they foreclose on your home? They put it in the legal section of the newspaper in tiny bold print, and who reads that, right? Who reads that? And so people may be being purged unknowingly. I believe that goes back to an education issue, voter outreach and voter education. Sending a postcard out to people who may have moved, who may not own a home, who may have gotten foreclosed on or evicted. We don't know their current situation, and having had a real estate title insurance company, knowing the challenges that we faced back in 2008 when we had the real estate failure, okay? When we had Katrina in 2005, I was down there abstracting in New Orleans when the books were still wet to help people get back in their homes. So I know the challenges people face with moving around and having those unexpected moves, and sending out a postcard I don't feel is enough, because they may be moving around in the same jurisdiction, the same precinct, and they get there to vote and their names are not on the roll because they didn't respond back to a card in the mail. And we live in a technology society. So people move quickly, people move fast. We have to have that voter outreach, that voter education to let people know that they can even possibly be purged from the rolls. But we also have to not just look at the problem, we have to look at the diagnosis for the problem. And the diagnosis is voter education and voter outreach. Getting closely in proximity with our churches, with our organizations in the community, with our schools, with our colleges and universities, and with organizations that support voter education and outreach to ensure that people know that this can happen, but to not purge people from the rolls unnecessarily. People that should be on the rolls to vote, that are legally entitled to vote, should be eligible and able to vote when they get to the polls. And I don't want our commissioners to face the challenge of looking someone in the face and telling them they can't vote because their name isn't on the roll, because they face that pressure too, and they are amazing. And we don't want barriers for them either. So as Secretary of State, I will educate, I will organize, and I will also engage with people myself, like I'm doing with my campaign in the Secretary of State's office, to make sure that everyone that's legally eligible to vote can vote. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a few questions, and my first question is a follow-up to the previous question regarding felonies. Those convicted of felonies that will be eligible to vote come March of 2019. What specifically is that plan to inform those individuals and to get them registered? Because obviously once you're elected, that only leaves us 3 months to get that information out. So what specifically is the plan to allow that to happen?
Well, my first step is convening that meeting. Having worked in the capacities I've worked in, I'm very, very well versed on the penal system and getting in touch with probation officers, because that's where you are. If you're on probation, your probation officer, your parole officer, you can go directly to them and get them to get on board. And having been in that system, you know, operating with them, working in interagency relationships, I built those relationships where I can go in and do that with my sheriff, you know, with the Department of Corrections, with wardens. You know, these people, they are willing to work with you if you just simply ask. Just like I asked for votes, I'm gonna go and ask, let's work together. Let's convene this meeting and make sure that they can vote, and I want to see them vote immediately in the first election. I don't want them waiting until the elections in the fall to vote. I want them to vote immediately. So that's gonna take me taking the initiative to get everyone on board. And that's gonna take me reaching out to them, not waiting on them to come to me, because I believe in taking initiative. And as a leader, especially a leader in our third highest office in our state, I believe I need to be the person that leads that effort and goes out. And I've been endorsed by Vote, so I will also involve the people who are closer to the problem, because the people who are closer to the problem are the people that are better able to diagnose the problem and to find solutions to resolve it. So they're gonna work with me as well.
Okay, so my second question is, with the last election, especially what happened in Georgia and in Florida, a lot of voters, and specifically I've spoken with a lot of voters as well, they have lost confidence in the voting system. Has there been any talk, or do you have any plans to initiate a more modern voting system that would eliminate any kind of voter fraud or anything like that here in the state of Louisiana?
Okay, when you say modern, are you talking about
Well,
using?
something outside. I mean, the voting machines are probably the most modern, effective way. But has there been any talk of even doing something possibly even more like a digital voting mechanism, or something where it would be less
Okay, so this is how I answer that question. We are currently looking at new voting machines. The first thing I would need to do is, when I get in that office, is do an RFP to get new voting machines. When we look at our current voting machines, they're the same ones I used when I was at the clerk's office, overseeing the elections in East Louisiana Parish Clerk's office. We are still using those same voting machines today since 2005. They're outdated and we need new ones. But I believe we need voting machines that when we cast our ballot, they produce a voter verified paper trail that can be audited. I also believe that not only should it produce the voter verified paper trail, it should have a digital register that also does a logging that logs those votes, so people can be confident in case there needs to be an audit. You can match the digital log with the paper ballot, and when people leave, they see how they voted, and they're confident that their vote is counted and that it's counted accurately and securely. There's also blockchain technology, which is being used in West Virginia currently to allow military and overseas voters to vote. And they are able to vote from an app on their cell phones, because our military and overseas don't always have the opportunity to vote. A military personnel could be in combat. They can also be in a submarine in the middle of the ocean. They're fighting for our right to vote, so we need to give them an opportunity to vote just like everyone else. Now that's forward future thinking, because we currently don't have the processes and procedures to implement something like that right away. But we can work toward it in the future, because anything we implement, we have to make sure we can implement it securely. We don't want any hacking in our election system. And having the tech savvy that I have, I always tell people I'll build my own site. So when you're talking to someone on social media, you're actually talking to me if I wake up at 2 in the morning and I decide to respond. So I think that the Secretary of State needs to have diverse talent in the office, and that's tech savvy, that knows our laws, and that also knows how our laws interact with other laws, that knows how to use technology to protect our data and to prevent hacking, as well as to make sure that when the data migrates, that it migrates appropriately to the appropriate departments and to the appropriate machines, and that it is registered properly and accurately, and people can have confidence and peace of mind that when their vote is cast, that it is cast for the person of their choice, regardless of party affiliations. Thank you.
Good evening. Hey, look, I am very pleased to have you here, because I was one of the big supporters within the Democratic Party at the time. It's on. So the thing of it is, we're talking about voter registration, how to get out to vote. Right now, we have early voting, and a lot of us feel going downtown to early vote is in a compact situation. I don't know if you have to get with the clerks of court to find out how to make it more accessible as far as early voting goes. I think a lot of people would vote early. I always say we have 7 days to vote early, 1 day to finally get out our vote. So, but the way the situation is now, it's hard for us to find parking spots, to get up on the 3rd floor to do anything. And I don't know what would you have to do to get the clerk of courts, the voter registration office, to make it more accessible. Now, I know when you vote now, they give you a card to put in the machine, and when you cast the ballot, that card come out. But I don't know what it's really for. Never asked no question about it. But I like what you're saying. They can have a paper trail on our election. Thank you.
Okay, so I look normal. I'm actually temporarily mobility impaired because I have sciatica. And you never know when it's gonna act up, right? You may be driving and get to somewhere and you can't walk all of a sudden. And what I've gained from that experience is we have to make sure that everyone is able to vote. And I've had many complaints from people along the campaign trail where people get to polling places and the mobility isn't there. We've even seen it in our last election in Orleans Parish, the sidewalk where people had to park, they didn't have the access for disabled mobility. Well, we say mobility impaired. That's what's on my license, my ID. We need to make sure that people who are mobility impaired have the access that's needed. Now, if we think about a person being mobility impaired, not being able to access the voting booth, that's a problem. A lot of our courthouses where people vote, they are grandfathered in. They don't have the proper handicap accessibility in those areas when we go vote. That is going to be a Secretary of State working with our Register of Voters and working with our clerks of court to ensure that we know what's there and that we make the appropriate accommodations for people to be able to vote. I like having signs. People have said that they have gone to polling places and not known exactly where to go, and they're turning around. I don't know about you, but when my sciatica is acting up, I don't have time to turn around, okay? I need to sit. And, I don't have time to walk long distances because walking a long distance could mean the difference between me falling on the ground and me just giving up. And we don't want people giving up when it's time for them to vote. We want them to vote. And we want voting to have ease of access. Not ease of access for hacking, but ease of access for people casting their ballots for their appropriate candidate of choice. So I believe that we have to work with the people that make the decisions on where those polling places are going to be located, but we also have to go out and just do a simple analysis of what do we need here, what are the needs, and what can we work together to provide. And as a person that has interagency relationships and that has worked to provide access in court systems, access in voting is no different. Administration is administration across the board. And working with people is working with people, whether you're working with people in a church or working with people on a job or working with people in government or working with people in your own business. You have to work together if it's gonna work. Teamwork simply makes the dream work. And I think we can do that as in our Secretary of State's office.
Yes, I had the privilege of hearing you in October at the Louisiana meeting too. And my main takeaway from that was that I didn't know a lot about what the Secretary of State's office did, because in addition to the important voting duties, there are the archives and businesses. So I wanted to, the business services, I wanted to give you an opportunity to say a little bit more about that. And I'll just say on the archive front, I had the experience this election season of trying to put together a voter guide for League of Women Voters, and they wanted what's on the ballot by city. And it was so hard to figure out from the website what's on the ballot and the do sign. And go one place for the list of candidates and one for something else. I mean, it was a real mess, just navigating that. So it makes me wonder what the state of our archives is. And then on the business front, I think at the Blue Acadiana meeting, you also mentioned the ITEP program and corporate exemptions. And I'm not sure exactly, I understand there's a lot of small business support in the Secretary of State's office. I don't know what role you have with the corporate tax exemptions, but Together Louisiana just released this little video, you may have seen it, about why Louisiana is so poor, and basically these large corporations in particular are not paying any property taxes. So archives and businesses, business services, you can say something.
Okay, so ITEP has absolutely nothing to do with the Secretary of State's office, but because my background is in accounting and I'm a candidate for a Master of Laws in Taxation, people often take the advantage of asking me about ITEP because I know about ITEP and how it works. I wish I could do something about it, but there's nothing I can do about it in this office. But I do oblige to explain when I'm at meetings and people ask me about it. As far as to our archives, I believe we need to digitize our archives. At East Louisiana Parish Clerk's Office, I spearheaded digital archiving, left before we completed it, but that was one of the projects that I worked along with the clerk there to, and as well as other deputy clerks, to digitize our records, which went back to the 1800s. We have the oldest courthouse in the state in Clinton, Louisiana, in East Louisiana Parish. I also worked with digitizing at Baton Rouge City Court in the administrative capacity there as Director of Criminal Traffic Division. We had over 100,000 warrants on the wall, so we had to figure out how are we gonna continue housing all of this, and sometimes the file folders would get lost because they had to go from the constable's office to the courtrooms, back to our department, sometimes to other departments within the court. And digitizing records is something that needs to be done these days, but it needs to be done securely, as well as you have that cost mechanism. And with the $84 million budget in the Secretary of State's office, I plan to shift some of the costs around in that office, because we spend about $52 million, and this, I don't work in an office, I just read budgets and numbers, because that's what I do with an accounting background. I crunch numbers. When I look at the budget, with us not having the voter participation rate we have, we're not getting enough bang for our buck if $84 million budget, $52 million is going towards elections. If we want to know where the problems are in any office, you know, accountants always say, look at the numbers. And when you look at those numbers and you're not getting that participation, you're not getting enough bang for your buck. I think we can look at some of that budget and see what we can do to digitally archive our archives records. As a land abstractor, when I had my real estate title company, you often have to go there and look at the maps back to patent, or what we call sovereignty. When the state first began to see where that land came out, that can be challenging if you're somewhere else in the state and you have to come all the way there to look at the archives. You know, I believe that when we digitize that, we can make it more accessible and available for people to look and see what is the history and the culture of our state. But it'll also get people more interested in knowing that, especially our young people, in that civic engagement. With the business services, I've owned several small businesses throughout my short lifespan. I've used the Secretary of State's office for over the past 20 years as both a notary, small business owner, and someone that helps incorporate small businesses and organize nonprofit agencies, and as well as churches. Our business services division can be more user-friendly, and it can be more accessible. We also have to look at, in rural areas, people don't have the access to computers always to do everything online. I can tell you right now, with the business registrations, when you have to update your registration each year, sometimes, you know, the little postcard in the mail is a good reminder for people who need paper. Okay, that may be the way they keep their records. But right now, if you're signed up online, it's going directly through the online system. And if you're not tech savvy, that means you have to pay somebody to keep up with that for you. And that can be costly on the small business owner. So I believe that we need to look and make sure that that service is accessible to people in both rural areas as well as people in city areas that, you know, if you want paper, give you paper. If you want to have it online, let you go online. But we have to look at what each person's needs are and make sure we're meeting those needs. There's also uniformity that's needed with the UCC filing. And we always had a saying, as an abstractor, when you go to the courthouse to file a UCC and one courthouse wouldn't take it, we said, well, you have several more tries. Just keep going to a courthouse until they take it, because it doesn't matter where you file it, it's all going into the same database to the Secretary of State's office. Well, I believe in working with clerks of court to ensure that that process is uniform. We decide what are we going to take, what are we not going to take, which forms are we going to use, what forms are appropriate, because we don't want people running around from courthouse to courthouse to file one simple document. A lot of people don't know that the Secretary of State's office does UCCs. I know that because I have that experience. So I also have the experience of knowing how to reconfigure the website to make it more user-friendly. That's another challenge that we have. The website is often confusing. People can't get on there and easily locate information. I believe that we need to have more information organized appropriately so people can know their polling locations. You have to go through too many steps to find out where you're voting. It's too many clicks. And if we know our young people, their attention span is not long enough to click, 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 look for stuff. They need it at their fingertips. And I know because I have 2 adult millennial sons, and they can't stand to listen to my 1-minute commercial, even though one of them recorded it for me. They need it in 15-second splurges. That's enough for them, little bites of information. So I also want to put information on there, sort of like in court systems where we have pro se litigants that can't afford to attorney representation. What we do is we have pro bono services that explain to them how to do processes and procedures to file their own matters in court. I would like to have something like that in our Secretary of State's office when it comes to business services for people who can't afford an attorney to open up their businesses. They can at least get enough information to get started. And then when they start making that profit that we want to see them make and creating those jobs that we want to see them create and help our economy the way we want to see our economy help, they can afford to pay for those services and then focus more on their business. But I think the first step is to get started. So we have to give people enough information as well as enough confidence to get started. And once we do that, I think that we'll help take our state as a whole to the next level and also increase our economy. Thank you. Yes.
Right here. You have a gentleman here with the microphone.
Sure.
Yes, well, I voted early today and I voted for you.
Thank you.
And I urge everybody else to When I often ride the bus, the city bus here, and when I looked up how to get to the registrar of voters on the bus, I saw that I had 0.8 of a mile round trip of walking because the registrar of voters isn't on the bus route. Will the Secretary of State, does the Secretary of State set up guidelines and rules about where early voting locations should be? And are there guidelines that would require a parish to put their early voting near the bus lines?
Okay, so our polling locations, the Secretary of State's office has to work with the Register of Voters on polling locations the same way when you think about people wanting to extend early voting. You have to have people that are willing to do that. And that's why I think it's important that the Secretary of State be a person that is willing to compromise. And I know we hate that word, but we have to build good relationships with people so we can sit at the table and work with each other. And I believe that's something that I can do because I've done it, in business, I've done it in public service, I've done it in churches, I've done it in organizations that didn't always see it my way. I just sat there at the table until we compromised to get it done. And I think that the Secretary of State is gonna have to realize that you can't force people to do anything if it's within their discretion. So when you can't force people to do something, you have to work with them to get it done. And you have to stress how important it is. And you need the citizens to be behind you and to voice these concerns in public forums like this, but not just when I get in office. I'm gonna need you with me at the table to let the Register of Voters and the commissioners know the challenges that you face in our clerk support. so they can know what the challenges are you face when you come to the polls. You have to be there with the legislators to let them know the challenges, the barriers that are there, especially in rural areas, especially in areas where you have to use public transportation. We're gonna have to sit at the table together and work together to solve these challenges, because currently, no, I can't force polling locations. But what I can do is I can work with people to establish polling locations that are gonna be easily accessible for the people of Louisiana. And it's gonna take the people of Louisiana holding people who make the decisions accountable for ensuring that everyone has the same access to vote. And I will work to do that it will be priority as well.
So I think we have 3 people who have questions. We're going to start right here, and we're wrapping up. So I'm going to go 1 right here, 2, 3, and if we have time, we'll hit this one over here, all right?
Okay.
Thank you. Mine is more information. My name is Bobby. I'm a former state representative for District 39. I'm going to touch bases on these 2 gentlemen here. I introduced a bill in 2008 that extended the hours from 4:30 to 6 p.m. I want you to know that all the registrar of voters was totally against it, because there was an hour and a half more they had to stay. But incidentally, I did some research here about 4 or 5 years ago, and over 40% of the absentee voters are between 4:30 and 6. That's why the problem has become such a number one thorn in everybody's side, because you don't want to go. There's no parking. Incidentally, they were doing the little concrete work here right during that, and people were frustrated and all this here. So incidentally, when you're going to be sworn in, you're going to go to Baton Rouge, and you're going to find there's another bill that I authored that extended the locations in each parish. And I recommended at the time, and Jay Darden was our Secretary of State at the time, he signed off and approved everything, that Lafayette's got beautiful libraries, got plenty of handicap parking, plenty of everything, internet's everywhere. That's where I think our absentee voters early voters should be moved, because there's plenty for everybody, and there's one in every municipality.
And I, as Secretary of State, I will be willing to support anything that leads to more access and more voting, because I want 100% people-powered participation in our voting systems. And to get that, you have to do things that have never been done if you want to get results that you've never seen. And I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Hi there. Okay, so I had a bunch of questions, but I'm going to give you a softball to make everything go faster. I think that there's a growing swell in America for this idea. I believe it should be happening at a national level, but also for Louisiana being one of the first. And I believe that should be the case, that Election Day should be a holiday with possible reimbursement, just based on the fact that you can make it a holiday all you want, but if people have to choose between going to the polls or working, I'm not married or anything, I'm too young for all that. That being said, there are a lot of people who they have kids, so even if you do make it a holiday, and even if you try and make it to where it's accessible, if it's between that or a day of work, then they're going to choose a day of work every time because they have to. Even a case where, they might be cutting someone's yard, you know what I mean? So I believe that it should be a state holiday. Maybe you could give the other secretaries of state to turn to a national holiday, because I know that it's happening in the Congress and the Senate. There are freaking bills that are getting shut down. I believe that if we all work together, we can make it accessible, which means, setting a day. Monday is fine if you make it a holiday, because then that's a 3-day weekend and everyone loves that. With reimbursement.
That question is right here. The legislature makes the laws. The Secretary of State is purely administrative and carries out the laws. But it's important to have a Secretary of State that's willing to work with the legislature and that will support any measure that will improve ease of access and ease of, people voting, your time. I'm a woman that wears many hats, wife, mother, also, my kids are adults now, but I know the challenges that I faced when it was, I had a business client and I needed to go vote. You have to choose, or if your kids are doing something and you have to go vote, or if your kid is sick and you have to go vote. My first time running, the day before the election, my husband was in the emergency room and he ended up in the hospital. If we didn't, on election day, so had we not voted early, he wouldn't have even been able to vote for me. Okay. So we have to make sure that people have the opportunity to vote, because even if you're on those rolls, if you don't vote, the change can't come. And in order to do that, you have to have a Secretary of State that's willing to support measures that improve access and doesn't suppress. And I'm willing to do that as well.
My question is, my question is, to the seniors, like, can they have, there's such a way they can have like buses to pick them up, because some of them don't have a ride, and some of them got walkers where they can't even come out and vote, to where they'll have like I would think like an iPad or something for like young kids to go to like each individual house that knows that they're handicapped and can't go out. Like that's a lot of votes are lost too, and plus in the hospital and nursing home also. For somebody to get out there so they could go vote, because sometimes it's not where they could go to the voting areas.
Address that one. We actually, a lot of people didn't know this before I started running, but people who have been incarcerated but not convicted, they can vote. They can actually request a paper ballot and they can vote because they're not convicted of a felony. And so they would simply have to request that ballot and it'll be mailed to the jail and they can vote, okay? Yeah, that's something that is on the law books, okay? It's important to have that voter education and that voter outreach, because had I not said that, people didn't even know that could be done. And wardens will facilitate that, because I know for a fact in East Baton Rouge Parish, Warden Dennis Grimes, he facilitated that, and I think he told me about 2,000 people got their paper ballots in prison, okay? So we have to be able to work with people to get this done, so it's important that we work with our nursing home, that we work with our retirement homes and our senior facilities. And having been a minister and growing up in a household with my dad as pastor and having a husband that's a minister as well, we work with a lot of people. We know the needs that are out there, and we're willing to work, in my capacity as Secretary of State, I'm going to be willing to work with people to ensure ease of access. Now, the legislature makes the laws, but it's up to the Secretary of State to carry them out, and it's also up to us to do that outreach that would help make the voting more accessible for seniors. Now, we can't use public transportation to bus people to the polls. We can't do that. We know that that's been decided, in our opinion, even by our Attorney General, okay? So we have to follow the law, can't use public funds to do that. But what we can do is work with organizing, which is something that we do in community. Communities organize. We need to get back to the basics as Louisianians and get in there and work together in our communities where we know each other to ensure that people have the rides that they need to get to the polls. If they request their paper ballots, that they get them, and that they are casting their vote the same way everyone else is casting their vote. We're gonna have to work together. And that's not just the Secretary of State's office thing, that is a voter engagement and voter outreach thing. And as I always say on the campaign trail, I am willing to be the chief voting evangelist for the state of Louisiana. If that means I have to hit the ground myself, come knock on your door and come out and get people to vote. Thank you.
So, we have one more question and we're gonna wrap up.
This is really just a follow-up to one of the first questions. As a gay person, I'm a little nervous about voting for somebody that went to Liberty University for undergraduate and graduate. And I would just like to be assured, for example, I mean, I know anybody could say I'm against discrimination, but people have different definitions of that word. So I just want to know, there's been, for example, clerks who have refused marriage license to same-sex couples and then said, this is our right to follow our religion. To me, that's just sort of an excuse for a kind of discrimination. I just want assurance that that wouldn't be your position, whether in this office, it's not really relevant to Secretary of State, but who knows, there could be a stepping stone to something else for you, and I just want to know that that's not going to happen. So.
It's very relevant to Secretary of State because you are protecting people's voting rights. You can't discriminate on any level. Like I said before, I'm an ordained minister, and I don't believe in religion, I believe in relationships. And if our relationships are proper with people, we respect their decisions. I don't know about you, but I haven't agreed with everything that my children do, and I know my dad and I have never agreed on anything that I've ever done. Because I have my own mind, and I have my own beliefs, and I have my own personal choices. And my decision to go to Liberty is one that was impacted by my responsibilities. I was a mother, a single parent, okay? I had gone through a domestic abusive marriage. And the first thing that I wanted to do was go back to school and finish my education. And Liberty University had an online program, and I only needed a few credits to finish up my bachelor's degree in accounting, because that stopped me from finishing up my degree, because that's a form of suppression. Domestic violence is a form of suppression, okay? It's financial and economic suppression on women when they don't have the educational tools to move forward. So I had to stop my college studies and go back to school. And so the first thing I wanted to do was go back to college, but I had two small kids and I had a business, but I wanted to finish up that degree. And I started out at Southeastern, but I ended up going to Liberty because they offered an accounting degree online, and I only needed a few credits. But once I got that, you know, it was like, I want to get my master's. So I went and got it, and then I wanted to get my Master of Divinity, so I went and got it, because we do live in a free country, and I believe that education is key for us if we want to get the tools we need to help change our communities. And I decided to use mine to help better my own life, but also the lives of others. And so I also chose to go to Southern University, which is a historical Black college and university right here in Louisiana. And I currently am a candidate for a Master of Laws in Taxation at Villanova University School of Law, which is also a Catholic university. And I believe this is important because I want voters to have enough information to cast an informed vote for me. But I want you to also vote for me. So we can ensure that the rights of all people are protected regardless of their lifestyle choices. That's not up to me. You know, I have people in my family that are LGBTQ. I hope I said them all. But I feel like that I am the candidate for this because I'm willing to respect that. I'm willing to fight for everyone's rights. I'm willing to stand here and be the candidate for all the people, all the businesses, and I'm proud to say even the visitors to our state, because we house those museums, and so we need that money too. And I want to encourage people to help make this a better Louisiana, because that's why I'm running. I want to see Louisiana win, and I believe I have a next level strategy to put Louisiana first, and it's called 100% people-powered participation, so I need you on board with me. And I need you and you and you and you and even you out there. I need the entire state of Louisiana to get behind me and say, we're ready to change. Because after being a lifelong resident, I'm tired of seeing Louisiana at the bottom of most good lists and at the top of most bad lists. And if you're gonna make the changes that we need to see, I couldn't sit down and wait. I was studying for the Louisiana bar exam when I decided to run for Secretary of State. And when you've been told for 3 years you shouldn't be thinking about anything else, I was thinking about Louisiana. I didn't ask anyone to run. I knew that this was the time, and I knew that I was the candidate because I'm willing to put people first. I'm willing to put my goals down. I'm willing to pick up the mantle and carry it across the state if I'm carrying it in my car, if I'm walking on street corners waving my own signs, and if I'm on social media engaging with young voters and people who are using social media for the first time at 2 in the morning. I am the people's candidate for Louisiana Secretary of State, and I plan to secure this office with your help. I plan to help work with community organizations, our legislators, our clerks of court, our Department of Corrections, our Register of Voters, and our wonderful, amazing commissioners, all of these people, and all of the Louisianans and the businesses to help take Louisiana to the next level. And I know we can do it because when I was counted out, I surprised and shocked the state and our nation. Yes. More passion than dollars, more passion for our state. Thank you. And I'm number 3 on the ballot. Thank you.
For running sound for us. Thank you so much.